Hi all, I hope you're doing well and welcome to the CineCircle Film Crowdfunding webinar. And it's great to have you all over here. It would be fantastic if you guys could give me a quick thumbs up if you can see me okay, if you can hear me okay, and just to make sure that everything is working. Okay, I am going to get started now. Once again, it would be really great if you guys could let me know if you can hear me okay. Okay, I can see some thumbs up, so I am going to get started. So once again, thank you all for coming to this crowdfunding webinar. And first thing is first, let me start off with a couple of scenarios, and I want to just see whether some of this might seem familiar to you guys. You might have launched a campaign but only managed to raise, 1 or 2K. Or perhaps you have an extremely professional team, incredible crowdfunding page, and you launch and you raise, only £0. Or perhaps you've never crowdfunded and don't know where backers come from. How you can rely on family and friends for a couple £100 or dollars, but what about the rest? Perhaps, you're wondering, how do I get strangers to back my campaign? You've tried every single Twitter account, Facebook group, and Reddit thread, but nothing seems to work. You might have even tried some Facebook ads and gotten a great cost per click, but no one backed your campaign. So if some of this stuff sounds familiar, then that's, part of what we'll be discussing today is why that might have happened and how to overcome those challenges. If you have any questions throughout this webinar, feel free to just pop them in the chat, and I'm either going to answer them as we go along or I will get to them at the end. So just to let you know, this is a bit of the structure for today, and today will last about 45 minutes to an hour. And we're going to have a short introduction to crowdfunding. We are going to go through some statistics and strategy. We are going to discuss why people back crowdfunding campaigns and how to create the perfect pitch. And we are also going to discuss a successful marketing outreach strategy. And finally, we're going to discuss how do you scale to raising over $10,000 or over £10,000. So a little bit about me. I work as a digital marketing consultant. I also used to work as a film producer up until just a few years ago, after which I've moved on to marketing more than producing. I also work as a crowdfunding coach. And finally, I am also the founder of CineCircle. And we've done quite a few crowdfunding campaigns and coached on quite a lot more. So let me give you guys a quick introduction into crowdfunding. So first thing is first, what is crowdfunding? And essentially, crowdfunding is a way to raise funds for a project where you have many people giving small amounts of money in order to make the project a reality. And in the case of we are really talking specifically about film crowdfunding campaigns over here, or a creative project. So crowdfunding campaigns can be very, very different, but today we are really focusing on creative film crowdfunding campaigns. So why should you crowdfund? Well, the main reason why you should crowdfund, or perhaps the main reason why you shouldn't crowdfund, is to make money for yourself. So really, you're crowdfunding to raise money for a specific project, but you should not think of crowdfunding as a tool to get yourself paid and get yourself, essentially make money for yourself. It should really be money that you're making for a film and for a creative project. And you should really crowdfund a film that's, crowdfunding tends to be best when it's for a film that doesn't necessarily have a commercial appeal. So it's not a film that you're going to be making tons of money with afterwards. It tends to be a passion project or a short film, or something that that's not really possible to get funding from private investors, for example. And that leads great onto the third part, which is who are backers. Because for crowdfunding campaigns, backers are not investors. They're not people who are expecting a monetary return on, how much they provided you in terms of monetary funds. They are not people who are really expecting too much in return. They are essentially donors. They're people who are donating to your campaign because they also believe that this, your film could be a, important addition to, to the sort of film landscape, and, they really want to support that. So you should always think of backers more as donors for this crowdfunding campaign rather than investors. And finally, where do they come from? That's going to be one of the topics of today. But essentially, they can come from absolutely anywhere. And again, we'll go into the details of exactly where they'll come from throughout this webinar. So let's start off with the first main topic, which is statistics and strategy. And here I'm first going to introduce you guys to, just give you a couple of quick wins, some quick tips and tricks so that, if there's a couple of things that you can take away with from this webinar, it's going to be these 4 things, which is which platform to use, when to launch your crowdfunding campaign, what should your target be, and how long should your campaign be. These are very quick and easy to explain, pieces of information, which includes some statistics over here. So let's start off with when to launch a crowdfunding campaign. And the answer is easy: on Tuesday at 11 a.m. At 11 a.m., whichever time zone you're in, which is most likely going to be where your backers are as well. Or, if your backers are all in a very different time zone, it should be really at 11 a.m. their time. Now, the reason for that: weekends are notoriously bad for crowdfunding. People are out, they're not using their internet, they're not, checking social media, they're not checking their emails. So weekends tend to be extremely bad when it comes to fundraising. Monday tends to also not be a great day because people are really getting their week together. People have flooded in their inboxes with, emails over the weekend. So you really want to start on a Tuesday, because that way you have 4 full days until you hit your first weekend. So you have 4 days to really, get the campaign off to a great start before most likely you run into a first kind of hurdle on your first weekend. And 11 a.m. is a really good time to start. What should your target be? This is pretty much a impossible to answer question because it really depends on your budget. It really depends on the scale of your project. It really depends on how much you prepared for the crowdfunding campaign. But essentially here you can see some statistics of the success rate. And obviously the success rate of projects is way higher when you're raising under 5K. It's way, way lower when you're raising over 100K. So essentially the higher your target, the lower your chance of success. So the way that I see it is you should really think about 3 different things. The first is, what is the minimum amount of money that I can make this film for? If it's, if it's a short film and you're thinking the minimum is 10K, you obviously can't raise less than 10K. Now, the next is, what target gets you excited? What will get you, thinking this is going to be a really great crowdfunding campaign? I can really do something with this money. Because if you're raising, £1,000 or $1,000 that doesn't excite you, then it's not going to excite anyone else. So the target has to excite you. And then the final bit is taking those 2 things into consideration. What is the lowest you can go so that you can still make the film according to the budget and have a target that excites you? So those are the 3 things that I would consider. And most people end up raising some really narrow down this middle plateau. So what you really want in most cases is a 30-day crowdfunding campaign. And you really want a 30-day crowdfunding campaign, which is going to be, from the first Tuesday that you launch, and then you want to finish on a Friday. So a Friday is also a great day because, again, the last 5 days are going to be absolutely crucial, just like the first few days. And you want those last 5 days to all be weekdays rather than on a weekend. So you finish a campaign on a Friday. So whatever from a Monday to a Friday, the closest you can find to 30 days, That's what I would consider how long your campaign should last. And apologies, I believe the video stopped there for about 20 or 30 seconds or so. You should be able to rewatch it if you would like, but I'm just going to keep going over here. And what platform should you use? Well, there's three different ones that I would suggest. The first is Kickstarter, and the second is Indiegogo, from the two that you probably actually recognize. And Kickstarter and Indiegogo, let me just tell you the big difference between the two. Kickstarter is known for its all-or-nothing funding model. This means that if you're trying to raise 10K for your crowdfunding campaign and you raise 9,999, you will not keep any of the money. None of the money leaves your backers' accounts. On the other hand, Indiegogo is more known for its flexible funding model, which means no matter how much you raise as a percentage of your goal, even if you don't hit your target, you get to keep the money. So you might think to yourself, well, of course I want to go with Indiegogo. I want to keep the funds. Either way, but there's a couple of things to consider. First of all, if you're trying to raise 10K for a crowdfunding campaign and you only raise 1K, you can't actually make the film, which could, give you a pretty bad, put you in a pretty bad situation because you won't be able to make the film. Indiegogo has already taken its percentage cut and you still somehow need to return the money to the backers. Now, the other is actually that with Kickstarter, you're a lot more likely to raise, actually hit your target. And there are two main reasons for this. The first is with the all or nothing funding model, you will raise a lot more money at the start. Why? Because if I'm going to back your crowdfunding campaign and you send me the link just as soon as you start and you've raised £0, I'm going to think to myself, with Indiegogo, if I give you £50 or $50 right now and you don't raise any money for the rest of the campaign, you still keep my, $50 and you're going to spend it on beer or something because you won't be able to make the film. On the other hand, with Kickstarter, I'm confident that even if I'm the first backer, unless you manage to raise the full funds for the full campaign, you don't keep any of my money. So people will be a lot more likely to back your campaign with Kickstarter at the very start. The same thing applies to the very end. With Indiegogo, if you've raised $8,000 and you've got, a target of $10,000, you and your potential backers and your audience will all think the same thing. Well, we did pretty well over here. That's good enough. You've got 3 days left. Maybe we'll, make a bit more. Maybe we won't. On the other hand, with Kickstarter, you will have a huge amount of urgency. Suddenly, you will have audience, backers who will be increasing their pledges. You will have you and your team really motivated to get to that target. And because you have to get to that target, you will be a lot more likely to actually hit it. So most of the time, I much recommend Kickstarter because it really helps get more backers. Another one that you could that I'd recommend is Greenlit. Now, Greenlit is only available in the UK, but a US equivalent would be Seed and Spark. So essentially, these are Seed and Spark and Greenlit are two crowdfunding platforms that are smaller than Kickstarter and Indiegogo, that have some really great features that Kickstarter and Indiegogo don't have, that are specifically for filmmakers. And that's the main thing. They're specifically for filmmakers, and there's only film and creative projects on there. So take a look at all of those and pick one which suits your project best. And then the final bit of statistic over here is the success rate of Kickstarter film projects by the time the creator joined Kickstarter. So as you can see, if you joined Kickstarter just a week under a week before you launch your campaign, you have a 25% chance of success. Whereas if you launched it a few years before, or if you joined Kickstarter a few years before, you will have over a 50% chance of success. And this shows a couple of things. First of all, on Kickstarter, you can build a community. You can reach out to people beforehand. You can support other projects, and they will support you back. And main thing, you can do a lot of research. You will learn what Kickstarter campaigns work, which ones don't. So join crowdfunding platforms early. Look at all the projects, look at all the rewards that they're using and so on, because they will really help. That will really help, set your campaign up for success. Okay, so let's dive into a bit more of the concrete statistic and strategy. I want to show you guys a quick kind of stat over here. If your target is 10,000 pounds, and I'm doing everything in pounds over here, but this can be in dollars, as well, and it's actually very similar. Your average backing on a film crowdfunding campaign is usually 50 pounds or $50. Right? That's usually the exact average. And that includes some people who will back a lot more, some people who will back, just $1, £1. But on average, it will be $50, which means that you will need 200 backers. Now, most times a film crowdfunding campaign has a 5% conversion rate on their page, which means 5% of the people that come onto your crowdfunding page will actually support your campaign, which means you will need 4,000 people to come onto your crowdfunding page. Now, with traditional Facebook advertising or, other types of advertising, you will have maybe a 1% CTR, which is a click-through rate, which means maybe 1% of the people who sees your ads will click on your link. So you will need, 400,000 people to actually see the link in order to get to that 10,000 pound target, which seems really, not feasible for most people. And that kind of traditional marketing won't work, where you're just reaching out to, hundreds and hundreds or thousands of people to try and get a very, very small percentage to actually back your campaign. This won't work. Instead, the formula for a successful crowdfunding campaign is how do you reach out to a mass number of people who know you, know about your project, and how do you reach out to them in a very personal way? So this is what we're going to be discussing today. And it all starts off with the perfect pitch. Before we get to the actual pitch itself, it's important to know, why do people back campaigns? So I want to ask you guys here, who has ever backed a campaign? If you have backed a film crowdfunding campaign, could you guys let me know in the chat and let me know whether you knew the person who you backed the campaign or whether it was a complete stranger. So if you guys could add that to the chat, that would be really great. Because most likely what's happened is that you probably knew the campaign creator. You probably in some way or another knew the person who was launching the crowdfunding campaign, or you felt like you really connected with them. So, you saw someone and you saw a really personal story, you knew a really personal, you saw a really personal video of them, talking about their film, and maybe you felt like you connected with them so well that you almost felt like you know them. And I see a couple of people who are all saying that you knew them, which is, similar to my experience. Because most times people don't support film projects. People don't support the film itself. Instead, they really support the people behind the projects. And this is where you've got to change your pitch. When you're pitching for a crowdfunding campaign, a lot of the times you're really pitching your own personal story of why you want to make the film rather than the pitch of the film itself. So to create that perfect pitch, you have your film story, which is, this is what my film is about. These are the characters, these are the themes, this is why this film is going to be, super interesting. But really what you need more is a campaign story. And I'm going to give you guys a couple of these story examples, which is essentially, a hook. It's a way to get people excited about something, and there's a couple of components to why a pitch works. And what I found is one of the key ingredients is you have to tell people something real. You have to tell them a real story, something real that's happened to you, because when something's real, it's more dramatic, it's more scary, it's funnier, it's more emotional, and people find time to relate to real stories way more than to fake stories. I've been to quite literally hundreds of film networking events, and every single time that someone comes up to me and says, "Can I pitch you my film?" and they start saying, "My film is about this character who did this," I quite immediately zone out. On the other hand, when someone comes to me and they start telling me about their life, about something real, I right away, feel a lot more connected to this. So I'm going to give you guys a couple of quick examples of these campaign stories, which are a way to start a conversation about your crowdfunding campaign and a way to start your pitch. So the first is for a film crowdfunding campaign that I did for a short film about mental health. And for this, I actually had a very, very personal reason to create this film. And it was actually someone who was very close to me, who was going through a really, really tough time, suffering from quite severe depression, anxiety. And there was a day that she really essentially wanted to end her life. And that day, she came to work thinking that it was going to be her last day. And she came into work and she felt like there was no one there for her. And one of her coworkers saw that she was suffering and simply made her a cup of tea and asked her, "How are you?" Really genuinely asked her how she was. And that tiny act of kindness literally saved her life that day. It was, the reason why she kept going. And it was the reason why she saw that someone cared about her, someone would miss her when she's gone, and gave her, this spiral of positivity, which she didn't have before, which helped her to get through that day. And when she told me this story, I realized two very important things. The first is that life is extremely fragile. And the second is that kindness is powerful. And through the film, which is called The Power of One Coin, we wanted to show just how important small acts of kindness are and that they can even save a life. And this was our real story. This was our pitch. This was the way that we started every single conversation with every single backer. We told them something real. We told them something from the heart. And we told them the story, which, essentially this was the reason why we find it so important to tell this story. Now, let me give you a completely different example, which is from a comedy web series about London tour guides, right? So something completely different. So two actors came to me one time saying that they wanted to create a crowdfunding campaign and they wanted my help coaching them through it. So they came to me and they told me that, they used to be tour guides, now they're actors. And they really, the amount of, crazy people that they would see as tour guides and, the amount of crazy experiences that they would have, that they're really hilarious. And, they met some, really, really hilarious people. And, they started telling me about the characters that they're going to put together and how funny it's going to be. But it really wasn't grabbing my attention. It was, they were telling me about these fake characters that they made up and that they thought they were funny. So I said, guys, okay, like for this crowdfunding campaign, you gotta tell me something real. You got to tell me a funny, real story that actually happened to you, because that's going to be the only way to really get people to find, something interesting in it. So they said, okay. One of them said, you know what? I'm going to tell you about my very first time when I was a tour guide. When I finally went through all of my training, I learned, I shadowed other tour guides. I went through all the training and I finally got to be on a tour guide bus by myself. And that was the first time that I was leading it. And I get on the bus, I start telling people about all the monuments. I start telling them, about all the different, the history of London, and people are engaging, they're asking questions, and everything is going incredibly well. I'm super proud of myself. I'm really smashing it. And then I see a kid starting to piss out the window. What the hell do you even do in that situation, especially considering that the mom is sitting right next to the kid? She sees that he's pissing out the window and she's not saying anything. And I'm standing there thinking, my God, I really need to make a web series about this, because that was day one. And the amount of insane things that happened after that were just, incredible. And that was their pitch, that was their hook, that was their campaign story, that was the reason why they wanted to make that web series. So ask yourself, what is the reason why you want to make your film? What is the point in time when you decided to create your film? Because this kind of pitch, this kind of real story is going to be something that people will be able to relate to way more than just telling them, this is my film, this is the genre, these are the characters, this is why it's great. Find that real story that you have that made you want to create this film. So now, once you have thought about that and you've got this pitch in your mind, the next bit, and this is a pitch that you're going to be using when you're telling people about the campaign, when you're, writing emails, promoting your campaign, even in the video of your crowdfunding campaign. And now let's move on to the outreach and communication. And I want to ask you guys a couple of questions over here. First of all, have you ever responded to spam? Or, have you ever responded to a filmmaker posting a Kickstarter link in a filmmaker Facebook group? My guess is that no. And I haven't either, because no one really responds to spam. So, if you don't, why would anyone else? And this is where, you really want to make your outreach personal. So how you reach out to your audience really matters. And the more personal, the better. So Facebook ads, right? The least personal way you can reach out to someone, because you're just targeting based on demographics. A social media post. It's something that's meant quite literally for absolutely everyone and anyone. So it's not personal at all. On the other hand, when you get to a personalized email, that starts to feel a lot more personal. Most of the time, if you get an email from someone you will read it and you will respond to it. A personal private message, again, a lot more personal. Finally, a phone call, something that you can't automate, something that has a really, really personal touch and works really well. And the most personal way to reach out to someone is meeting them in person and telling them about your campaign. I can guarantee you right now that during your campaign, if you reach out to 20 people that you meet them for a coffee, now that, after COVID, we're able to go out for a coffee again, and you tell them about your campaign and you explain, you really tell your personal story, your campaign story about why you want to make this film, and, you tell them about it, I guarantee you that nearly every single one of them will support you. On the other hand, if you create a social media post, it's probably not going to be very effective. So the more personal you reach out to someone, the better. Next, how do you personally reach out to people to a mass number of people? Because you want to reach out to them in a personal way, but to a huge number of people. So there's a couple of tips and tricks that I've got for you over here. The first is, on your launch days, the day that you launch your crowdfunding campaign, you quite literally want to, send out hundreds of emails that are highly personalized to all the people in your, that you've got, and that you've got their email addresses, telling them about the crowdfunding campaign. And I'm not talking about a copy-pasted message. I'm saying, hey, Simon, it's been 6 months since I saw you at the last film networking events. I hope that you're doing well. I hope that your auditions, for your acting jobs are going very well. How is it going? How are you finding your agent, et cetera, et cetera. By the way, I've just launched a crowdfunding campaign. So something you can't automate, you really have to write out these personal emails. And what I'd really recommend is, for weeks leading up to your crowdfunding campaign, just draft those personal emails. So in your Gmail, for example, you can write out the email, and instead of clicking send, just exit out of that email, and that will save it in your drafts folder. So that on the day that you launch your crowdfunding campaign, you've got these drafted personal emails as if they're written on your launch day, that you can just press send, 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 and send hundreds of highly personalized emails that will get a lot of response. Next, with mass emails, you can also use something like Mail Merge instead of MailChimp. A lot of you might have heard of MailChimp, which is a newsletter creating software essentially, or platform. But everyone knows that it's a newsletter because it's got a very specific look. On the other hand, Mail Merge is actually something that you connect to Gmail to send out a mass number of emails from your Gmail. So have a look at mail merge. Some people that I know have actually had quite a lot of success with Twitter bulk DMs. Now, 99.9% of the chance it doesn't work, but it might work for you. And again, there are software which can help you do that. Finally, we talked about meeting a lot of people face to face, that face to face is the most personal way. So go, perhaps you can create an event on your launch day and invite all the people in your city who might be interested in your campaign, and talk to all of them face to face. That way you can, instead of going out for 30 coffees, you can talk to 30 people all in one go in about a 2-hour window during an event. So these are some ways to, how you can reach out to a lot of people while still keeping it personal. So let's move on to finding your audience and your backers, right? You've got your page, you know how to reach out to them. So the next is, who do you actually reach out to? And essentially, here is, you really want to focus on the right type of audience, right? So here is this kind of chart that shows you, to generate about, 10,000 pounds, which again, you will need 200 backers. You might need to reach out to 1 million people who are what's called a cold audience. People who don't know you, they don't know, about a crowdfunding campaign. They don't know, they don't know anything about you. You're going to need to reach out to probably millions of those people to perhaps get a lucky few who will actually support you. Or you can reach out to, for example, 50,000 engaged followers, or 10,000 of a warm audience. These are people who perhaps know about you a little bit. They know you by name, but perhaps not too well. Or just 1,000 people from a hot audience. Now, an example of a hot audience ready to support your crowdfunding campaign would perhaps be your brother, your sister, your colleague at work who you've been, on a film set with, 100 times, someone who you did a really big favor for, one of your friends who just moved houses and you helped them with the move, and they owe you a really big favor. Those are people who are extremely likely to support your crowdfunding campaign. Now, if you can find 1,000 of those people, literally 1 in 5 will probably support your crowdfunding campaign, and that will get your 200 backers. But so who are all these people? Who is your audience? And essentially, you might think that, people who would want to watch your film. I actually, that might be true. Although if you're making a short film, if you're making, a really low budget feature film, it's probably going to be free to watch at the end. So you're probably going to release it for free somewhere, or even, if it's not completely for free, it might be on Amazon Prime or something like that. So people who want to watch your film, they can watch it whether they support your crowdfunding campaign or not. Perhaps you're going to think that fans of your film's genre, and genre films, they tend to do well with crowdfunding if they're, like horror or fantasy films with a very, very specific kind of audience who like crowdfunding projects, who like, these low budget films. But most of the time, again, if someone wants to watch an action film and you're making an action film, they can watch it for free somewhere else. Perhaps rich people. A lot of people always try to get rich people to support their crowdfunding campaign. The thing about rich people is they're rich because they know how to hold on to their money. And the one sad truth that I found is you can reach out to a lot of rich people, unless they know you personally, they are actually usually the worst possible people to reach out to when supporting your crowdfunding campaign. And actually, people who have less money tend to be a lot more generous. Perhaps people who backed campaigns in the past. Now, these are called super backers. And I go through, I put quite a lot of courses together online as well, which talk about super backers, for example. These are people who are serial backers on Kickstarter or on Indiegogo, who quite literally, back thousands of campaigns. And the thing about these people is you can't really reach out to them and even if you do, they're going to ignore your emails, even if you get their email address. There are people who are on, Kickstarter or Indiegogo, they find their campaigns themselves, and you can't really reach out to them. Or perhaps strangers. And the thing about strangers is that there's plenty of ways to get strangers to back your campaign. But the main way, because this is a question that I always get, how do I get strangers to back your campaign? And I say you can't, but you can make strangers feel like they know you, which will make them, essentially back your campaign because they won't be strangers anymore. So you have to, how do you get strangers to back your campaign? And there's a couple of, ways that you can, which is, finding people who are super passionate about the topic of your film. So if you're, creating a film about mental health, you can find people who are, huge supporters of mental health, or about climate change. You can find people who are really passionate about the topic of your film, which will make them want to support it. Perhaps these super backers that I've just been talking about. So there are quite a lot of different strategies. But if I were you, I wouldn't start there. I would always start with people that you know. Because if your family and your friends can't support your project or won't support your project, how can you expect strangers to? This is what I always ask. And usually, if you are really, really hesitant about reaching out to your friends and family to support your campaign, at least at the very start, that usually means that you're not too sure about this project. So I'm going to ask you guys a question. For example, if I was to tell you that if you raised 30K for your crowdfunding campaign, if you raised that, you had an absolute guarantee that your film will go on to win an Oscar, would you somehow manage to find that 30K? Would you manage to find that 30K if you knew that if you raised it, you would make a money that would, win an Oscar? Most of you would somehow manage. Through family, through friends, through other networks, you would somehow manage to find that funding because you had the absolute certainty that it would set up your career for life. And actually, for most people who say, I don't want to reach out to any of my family and friends, it's because they don't have the confidence in themselves that, that the film can be a real success and that they can set them up for life. So if you're really hesitant to reach out to your family and friends, just ask yourself, why? And why would a stranger back my campaign if the people that are closest to me can't? So for one of my crowdfunding campaigns where I raised 30K, my family and friends donated about 2 to 3K. And the rest came from people I didn't know before I started, but it didn't come from strangers. So again, we talked about that there are many ways of getting strangers to back your campaigns. But here is the main one that I want you guys to consider, which is team building. It's the best way to scale your campaign and to raise over 10K. So the theory is very, very simple. If you gather 10 filmmakers, each filmmaker only needs to find 20 backers. A £50 average backing will equal £10,000. So why is this so hard? It's one of those main questions that a lot of people ask where they will simply find the wrong team members. They think that a bunch of actors who are on the, involved in the project, or, some of the, you might find some crew members who are also involved in the project. And you say, can you guys please share my crowdfunding campaign? That doesn't count. You really need people who are going to be very involved in the crowdfunding campaign, who will be personally reaching out to all of their family and friends, who will then, again, multiply the amount of non-strangers that you can easily contact, multiply the amount of that hot audience, people who are ready to support your campaign. So for example, for my 30K crowdfunding campaign, me and 2 other campaign managers, there were essentially 3 of us who were at the core of the team. We had 3 people, the 3 of us who were, all producers on the project, who were very, very involved in the project. And then we found 12 associate producers. And then we also found another, around 5 cast and crew who really helped to promote the project. And that way, each one of us only had to raise about 1.5K, and that got us to our target. So how do you find these people? Well, I would start off with past work colleagues, people who you've really worked with before. You can even reach out on Facebook groups. But the main key here on Facebook groups is don't reach out to people saying, I want help raising money for my film. The key to finding a good team is getting team members to really feel like they have, that it's just as much of their project as it is yours. You guys are making it together. Even if that doesn't mean that, legally or financially that's the case, you really need them to feel like they're part of the project. So, make sure that on a Facebook group, if you are reaching out to people, you are saying, I'm really looking for people who are just as passionate as me about, this topic that I would like to make this film on. And because of that, I'd love to get in touch with some of you. If you're interested and you want to make something really special together, get in touch. Perhaps you can get in touch on, Mandy, shooting people as well. Networking events are absolutely fantastic place to meet people face to face and really get them on board your campaign. Or personal contacts. For example, for one of my crowdfunding campaigns, I had a couple of people who were simply people that I knew very well, who were willing to help me out. Because again, I explained to them just how important this one crowdfunding campaign is to me. Now, some of the ways that, you can grow it, essentially growing a team really multiplies the amount of those personal contacts, right? It also expands, your social media reach for free. So if every single one of people on your team all share every single one of your social media posts, you'll be reaching, 10, 20 times more people. You also have more varying skill sets, for growing a team. So you'll have people who might be great at drawing concept art or designing or editing your crowdfunding video. You're going to need that team for putting together your crowdfunding page and video. You will also have a lot more resources for rewards and perks. So for example, on one of my last crowdfunding campaigns, we had just happened to have someone on our team who said, oh, actually, I've got an uncle who owns an Airbnb and they'd be willing to put up a reward that you get a 2-night stay at the Airbnb, in a really nice area, if you back the crowdfunding campaign as one of the rewards. And that suddenly was a great £300 that we just got, that someone really wanted that reward. So you will find all of these resources to get great rewards if you have a bigger team. You will also have a boost in team morale, and finally campaign credibility. The more people you have on your campaign, the more easily it will be to show people, what, it's not just me being crazy over here wanting to make a film. It's really, I have a team behind me, a team of people who are supporting me and, who are also on this journey with me. And this campaign credibility and having a team really helps get those super backers. So it really helps get those people who are who back quite a lot of those crowdfunding campaigns. They always look for campaigns with a big team. So just keep that in mind. But this is one of those, best ways really to grow your reach and grow your audience. Start off with your own personal contacts and then grow it by expanding a team. So once again, just to kind of recap what we've been talking about today, and feel free to pop some questions in the chat if you guys have any. But essentially, this is the main strategy, right? It's remembering that people don't back films, they support the project creators. So pitch your personal story instead of your film story. Contact people that know you or know about your project. Contact them in a really personal way. Use those tips and tricks that I mentioned to contact more people in a shorter period of time. And then finally, grow a team to multiply that reach. Now, this is one of the most kind of basic strategies for growing your film crowdfunding campaigns. And as I mentioned, this is a 45-minute webinar, so there is only so much information that I can fit in here. If you guys are interested in finding out more, just underneath this video, there's also an in-depth crowdfunding course where we've over 4 hours of video tutorials, which really go in depth into more strategies on how to get people to back your campaign. Talk a lot about how to put together the perfect video, the perfect crowdfunding page, and so on. So if you are interested in that, simply feel free to click on the link below and it will give you a big discount on that Udemy course. And you can also get a refund for 30 days after getting the course as well if you aren't happy with it. But except for that, let me know if you guys have any questions, and I do hope that you enjoyed this webinar. In terms of the slides, this page that you're on right now will actually stay live, and you will be able to rewatch the video right here on this page. So if you didn't manage to take notes on everything, you will be able to rewatch it because this page will stay live for at least another 30 days. So do let me know if you guys, if you guys have any other questions, and I'll stick around for another minute or two to see if you guys add anything else in the chat. And it's great to see some networking over here, and that some of you have already running some live events and so on. Okay, question over here. If the film story is a fictional historical, what do you suggest in order to connect to something personal and make it real? For example, mine is a witch hunt in the 17th century. So really the question over here is how do you connect this to something real? And the personal story is not always, super related that you have something really related to the story of the film. Sometimes it's really discussing, why do you want to make this film? What is the real reason that you want to make this film? Perhaps it's the fact that this is a story that you feel like hasn't been told before. What is so original about this story, and how did you come up with that really, really original concept? Why are you so passionate about this film? That's sort of your real story. It's the story of the moment that you came up with this idea. And you got to really ask yourself, like, what is that one piece of gold in the story that people can really relate to? And you always kind of say it as your personal story. So I was, always, for example, if you're, creating a horror film about or something like that, it's saying, I keep on watching all of these horror films that do this really badly, and I've always wanted to do something that was so specific and and showed something like this. And you kind of really want to tell the story of, why do you want to make your film? Why do you want to make this film, and why is your story so original? And why you are the best person to make that film. So essentially, you're always trying to talk as much about yourself in that campaign story rather than the film itself. Okay, great, guys. So thank you so much for taking the time to attend this webinar. I hope that you found it useful, and I wish you guys all the best on your own crowdfunding campaigns. Feel free to to email me the link at info@cinecircle.co.uk when you guys go live. But except for that, I hope you guys have a great rest of the week. Oh, sorry, I see you got a couple more questions. Let me just quickly go through those. How important are rewards, perks, and motivating backers? Very important, definitely. So I would do quite a lot of research on your perks. Actually, you guys can check out a blog as well on our page. If you go to our blogs, there is a page with 21 really, really great ideas for rewards and for a film crowdfunding campaign. So I would check that out on our blog page, because they're definitely creating good rewards and perks that people really want is one of the best ways of attracting complete strangers to actually back your campaign. And next, what if the project is great, but friends and family wants me to be an accountant? Is there only this type of strategy described to rely on friends? So one thing is, I'm fairly certain that it's not going to be all of your friends and all of your family who would like you to be an accountant, but you have a lot of people who are there to support you through the journey of creating films. But also, if you don't know anyone, there are plenty of strategies to get people to feel like they really know you. One of them that I really like is a sort of 50 backers in 50 days strategy. So I mentioned that if you have if you have someone that owes you a favor, then they will be very, very likely to support your crowdfunding campaign. So one thing that I've had someone try on their own campaign is actually this 50 backers in 50 days, where every single day you essentially do one really nice thing for a complete stranger, whether it's online during an event, you really help someone out. So, someone is completely new to the film industry and you offer them a, Zoom call where you discuss, all the different ways that they can find new jobs. Or, you meet someone at a networking event and you offer to read their script and give them feedback. So every single day, find one person and do something really, really nice for them. And that way you will have a bunch of people who are very likely to support your crowdfunding campaign because you first did a favor for them. So that's one way that you can also get, people who, you know quite well actually after doing something like that, but who, aren't part of your family and friends to support your campaign. Okay, great. So yeah, like I said, I hope that you all found this useful, and I wish you guys all the best on your crowdfunding campaigns. So yeah, thank you. Good night and or good morning, depending on where you are, and good luck on your campaigns. Take care all.